Hi, this is Pinchu TV, a Philippines addict slowly building a stock portfolio on the Philippine Stock Exchange on the long road to an SIRV, the Special Investors Resident Visa, and a move to Manila. Quick note before we start, I'm traveling this week and don't have my microphone with me, so an AI voice is filling in. The words are all mine. Let's get into it. Let me give you the punchline first. This was the week a single presidential speech wiped 20% off the country's biggest power company. On Monday, President Marcos delivered his State of the Nation address, the SONA, and called on Congress to remove the so-called system loss charge from electricity bills. That one line sent Meralco, the largest power distributor in the Philippines, into a multi-day slide, from 600 pesos to 480, a 20% collapse in a single week. The PSEi itself finished Friday down 1.1% at 6,236.44 for a weekly loss of 0.71%, the second straight weekly decline. And yet, my portfolio took a direct Meralco hit and still improved on the week, beating the index for the second week running. Let's unpack all of it. Here's the day-by-day. Monday, the index rose about 0.5% to 6,314.90, a relief bounce as Middle East tensions eased. Then, after the close, came the SONA. Tuesday, down slightly to 6,304.03. The electricity reform headline sent Meralco down 4.66% to 562 pesos, dragging the industrial sector with it. Wednesday brought a rebound, up 0.78% to 6,353.04 on bargain hunting, plus hopes that the central bank might be able to ease off its hawkish stance. Thursday, down 0.74% to 6,305.75. The Fed held rates steady on a divided 9-3 vote, and Meralco cratered 13.12% in a single session, all the way down to 480 pesos. And Friday closed the week down 1.1% at 6,236.44, weighed by three things at once: news that government debt hit a record 19 trillion pesos, a court freeze on the Metro Manila minimum wage hike, and positioning ahead of next week's index rebalancing. A week ago, the index stood at 6,281.01, so that's a weekly loss of about 45 points, or 0.71%. The peso, which touched an all-time low of 61.847 to the dollar the previous Friday, recovered to around 61.3. Small mercies. Oil is still above $100. Three stories worth your time this week. First, the SONA and Meralco. The system loss charge is the fee that passes the cost of electricity lost in transmission onto consumers. Scrapping it is great news for households, and a straight hit to the utilities revenue. Nothing about Meralco's operations changed this week. No earnings miss, no scandal. One speech, minus 20%. And full disclosure, I own 20 shares. I'll dig into that in a few minutes. Second, BDO posted a record first half. 40.7 billion pesos in net income, with loans up 15% and deposits up 13%. The core business is firing on all cylinders. The stock's reaction was a polite plus 1.2%, partly because the bank also stacked up extra provisions just in case. But last week I called the bank earnings the first real test, and this is close to a perfect score. Third, the central bank's forecast puts July inflation at 5.6 to 6.6%, down from 6.9 in June. The official number lands on Tuesday, August 5th. Still far above the 2 to 4% target, but if the peak is confirmed, the pressure for more hikes on top of the 4.75% policy rate starts to ease. Now my own portfolio. As of Friday's close, the portfolio sits at minus 12.85%, an improvement from last week's minus 13.2%, against an index that fell 0.71%. That's 2 straight weeks of beating the index in a down market. Though with Meralco detonating inside the portfolio, won the week feels generous. Took the hit and stayed standing is more honest. The rescuers were Jollibee, up 3.3%, Ayala Corporation, up 5.5%, and BDO on its record earnings. And after a quiet stretch, I actually traded this week. 2 buys on Thursday. First, 10 more shares of Jollibee at 148.90. That's the usual dividend reinvestment routine. Whenever the dividends pile up, buy the minimum board lot of 10 shares. Second, 200 shares of DMC at 7.40. My average cost there was around 10 pesos, so this buy pulls it down to 9.36. It's a contrarian bet on a mining and energy adjacent name that somehow isn't getting any love from $100 oil. Progress toward the SIRV target, $75,000 in Philippine listed shares, is still hovering around 10%. The weekly ritual. Biggest unrealized losses first. As of Friday's close, JG Summit down 36.8%, Frutas down 35.7%, Jollibee down 32.1%, Ayala Land down 30.8%, and SM Investments down 30.5%. The thing I feared has happened. JG Summit down another 6.5% this week, with $100 oil crushing its petrochemical business, has overtaken perennial cellar dweller Frutas for the top spot. Meanwhile, Jollibee improved from minus 34.6 to minus 32.1 on the price rebound plus the buy, sliding from second worst to third. The one leaderboard demotion I'm happy about. On the winning side, Double Dragon up 72%, LT Group up 58.7%, the Philippine Stock Exchange itself up 24.9%, Manila up 24.8%, and Globe Telecom up 23%. Double Dragon ground higher again. I've officially run out of things to say about it. The mover was PSEi, climbing to third place at 205 pesos, rallying ahead of the exchange's own rebalancing event. A little too on the nose, but I'll take it. 3 names deserve a closer look. Meralco first. No way around it this week. It's a tiny position, just 20 shares, but it swung from plus 6.4% to minus 14.9% in 5 trading days. A 20% weekly drop is something I've never had inside this portfolio. Here's the calmer view though. Scrapping the system loss charge requires Congress to amend the power industry reform law. The timeline and the impact are completely undefined. Meralco's own system loss is below the regulatory cap, and the company just posted a 26 billion peso first half profit. This is a fear price, not a math price. The 20 shares stay put. Jollibee rebounded to 148.80, up 3.3% on the week, back within sight of 150, as cooling inflation expectations gave restaurant stocks some breathing room. The dividend buy takes the position to 660 shares. The 52-week high in the 200s and 40s is still a distant memory, but I've reached a comfortable mental place. If it falls, my scheduled buys get cheaper. If it rises, the paper loss shrinks. Either way, I win a little. And BDO delivered the record half I'd been hoping for, lifting the position back into the green at plus 0.3%, the first time in 3 weeks. Last week I said, if the numbers show up, it floats back up. The numbers showed up. Time for the deep dive. The theme. What Meralco's crash teaches about policy risk. Last week's theme was external risk, the US tariff. This week delivered the mirror image. Domestic policy risk, experienced live in my own account.
Think about how strange this is. Meralco's 20% drop had nothing to do with earnings, management, or scandal. A single line in a speech did it. And the cruelest part, the proposal itself, cheaper electricity, is something I genuinely welcome as someone who wants to live in the Philippines. As a resident-to-be, I'm cheering. As a shareholder, I'm bleeding. That contradiction is emerging market investing in its purest form. 2 lessons I'm writing down. First, regulated utilities, power, water, telecom, look stable precisely until policy moves. My portfolio holds 3 of them: Meralco, Manila, and Globe. The stability is real, but it's borrowed from the regulator. Second, don't sell into a headline. When neither the bill's contents nor its timeline exist yet, the price is measuring fear, not cash flows. My tuition for this lesson came to about 1,670 pesos in unrealized losses, cheaper than most seminars. 5 things on the radar for next week. 1. July inflation, out to August 5th. Does it land inside the central bank's 5.6 to 6.6% forecast? That sets the mood for the August 27th policy meeting. 2. Second quarter GDP and the June jobs data, a full week of report cards. 3. The PSEi rebalancing takes effect, so expect strange flows in individual names. 4. Any follow-through on the system loss charge in Congress and Meralco's reaction. 5. The peso holding the low 61s and $100 oil. So to wrap up, the PSEi lost 0.71% on the week, closing at 6,236.44 for a second straight weekly decline. The portfolio improved from minus 13.2 to minus 12.85, beating the index for the second week running. BDO posted a record half and climbed back into the green. Jollibee is knocking on 150 again. And Meralco taught me, for a tuition fee of 1,670 pesos, what policy risk feels like from the inside. Next week, inflation and GDP, where the economy checks its answers, slow and steady. The usual disclaimer: this podcast documents a personal investment journey and is not investment advice or a recommendation to buy or sell any security. Investing in the Philippine stock market involves currency and country risks. Invest at your own risk. Salamat kaayo for listening. This has been Pinchu TV. See you next week. Amping!